Hello, my name is David John Jeffery and I am the author of g.o.d.tech Mark of the Beast. Today I'm going to be reading from you for chapter 4. So let's begin. Chapter 4, Freedom Control, 21st of September 2029. Hever Castle, United Kingdom. World Parliament UK headquarters. Hey beautiful! Mary awoke, startled, peering out from the covers. She saw a young woman looking back at her, smiling. She had blue eyes and blonde hair, but her angelic face was disturbed with a bluish-purple bruise exploding over her left cheek. "Who are you?" Mary asked, still shocked by her awakening. "I'm Nikki, and you must be Mary. I'm sleeping upstairs, as it were." Nikki pointed to the bunk bed above her. Mary struggled to get up and realised she had slept with a towel wrapped around her hair, which was now in tangles. She took off the towel and pulled out her hair in misery. "You want me to sort that out for you?" Nikki asked, as she went into the bathroom and reappeared with a hairbrush in her hand. "Yes, that would be lovely," Mary replied, as she got out of bed. Nikki got on the bed and sat behind her, trying to comb out the tangles in Mary's hair. "You have nice thin hair. It makes it easier to entangle," Nikki said. "How long have you been here?" Mary asked. Nikki paused for a moment. "It's been about a year now since they brought me in." "They brought you in?" Mary turned around and looked at her, then back again. Nikki continued to work on her hair. "I really shouldn't talk about it. The important thing is that we're both here, and we should make the best of it. My last roommate wasn't the nicest of people." Nikki frowned. "What happened to her? I assume it was a woman," Mary replied. "Yes, she was moved to another facility. If you do what the people want, you're moved on. Hence the reason why I'm still here." She shuffled around and off the bed. "I'll be right back," she said. Nikki went into the bathroom and emerged with a battery-powered hairdryer. Getting back on the bed, she started to blow-dry Mary's hair. Mary wanted to ask her more. "What kind of things do they ask?" she asked. "Well, the main one is that they want you to take the mark." "I won't do that," Nikki responded. "Why? Do you believe in God?" "No, I just think that no human should be forced to do something they don't want to. I notice you don't have the mark." Nikki began to whisper, "I also try to disrupt production here." Mary was suddenly interested. "How do you do that?" she asked. Nikki whispered again. "Well, one of my plans I'm working on right now is to cut the power of the site. It's tricky, but I think I can do it." Mary got excited and also lowered the tone of her voice. "How? Can I help?" Nikki proceeded to explain all the plan, which would provide a 24-hour power cut, and Mary agreed they should do a test run first. The new plan should cut the power for only a few hours. The problem with cutting power is that there were backup generators that started after 2 hours of no power, so a plan would need to be in place to take those out too. However, the first plan would be to cut the power. The first thing they needed to do was distract the boss. "Christine!" Mary shouted across the hall. Chris turned around and saw Mary running towards her. "What's wrong, Mary?" she said, showing concern. "Nothing. I just wanted to know if you could show me where I was working. I want to get a feel for things," Mary said. Chris grinned and replied, "Come on, I'll show you." She took Mary by the hand and led her to an office at the far end of the warehouse. "This is your office," she said. "My office?" Mary sounded shocked. "Yes, your office," she repeated. Chris pulled out a swivel chair and beckoned Mary to sit behind the desk. There was a built-in computer console on the desk. "What do you need me to do?" Mary asked. Chris sat down on the desk and swung her legs in the air. I did my research, Mary. You are very creative. We want you to design the next processor, the g.o.d.tech processor. Mary sat still stunned by what she was hearing. We want you to create a mark that will appeal to everyone, including the terrorists. We believe you have ability to market to them. I'm surprised, Mary replied. I didn't expect this at all. Please tell me more. Mary was delaying for time as Nikki put into action the next plan. She was to increase the speed output of one of the processor machines and create a power overload that would take out the power in the factory. This was an apparent success because as Chris was explaining the job to Mary, all the lights and equipment in the room lost their power. Chris immediately used her portable radio to report the fault to the father, electrical engineers, who relayed that the power had gone in the entire complex. Mary was overjoyed that this had been such a successful achievement, so much so that she realised she was smiling a bit too much, and Chris was staring straight at her. Did you have something to do with this? Chris asked inquisitively. Mary shook her head. No, Chris, how could I? I've been here with you. Chris looked straight at her in disbelief. A dozen soldiers came into the factory, armed, ready to take control if there was any trouble. Can I go to my room, Chris? Mary asked. Get out of my sight, shouted Chris. She was angry and knew she had to stop production, which meant she would be in trouble. Mary ran into the bedroom and gave Nikki a big hug. We did it, Nikki exclaimed. You did it, Mary screamed. Not without you, replied Nikki. Mary sat down on her bed. I think I could enjoy it here, she said. Nikki climbed up to her own bed and lay down. We're going to be great friends, Mary. You must pretend to work hard, and in the meantime, we will cause chaos at the father, she replied. Samuel lay on his bed. He was thinking about all Miss Marshall told him. He wanted to know more about the mark and God. His parents always prayed to God, so he didn't see this as any different. Hey there! Samuel turned his head to the right and saw the boy he met earlier, who had spoken to him before that awful caning. Hello, Samuel replied. I'm Jack. What's your name, mate? He said cheerily. Samuel, he replied, with growing interest in this newfound friend. Okay, Sam, you're new here, aren't you? Jack said. Yes, replied Sam. Do you want me to show you around? Jack asked. Okay, said Samuel, smiling as quickly he jumped from his bed. Jack started walking briskly towards the bathroom, and Samuel followed quickly. Jack was about 12 years old, with brown curly hair, freckles, and big brown eyes. He was dressed in a blue military jacket, blue trousers, and brown shoes. As they entered the bathroom, Jack pointed to a secure door with a scanning panel. Sam, just scan your mark on that panel and I'll show you something, he said. I don't have a mark, Samuel sadly replied. I do want one though. Jack seemed to ignore the comment. You're going to love this, Jack smiled. Placing his right hand on the panel, the door slid open. Samuel was surprised and fascinated too. He excitedly ran through the entrance with Jack following closely behind. The room was large, and as they walked in, there were computer game consoles everywhere. Immediately on the right were gunfire games. On the left were simulators. Jack got into the seat of a racing car simulator console, and while Samuel watched. As Jack held the steering wheel, the game started. The noise was incredible, and Samuel was grinning like a Cheshire cat. All the games in this room are activated by the mark, Jack shouted over the noise. As I put my hand on the steering wheel, it sensed the mark and started the game. It even remembers what level I was on when I last played. This is just one of the brilliant things about the mark. Jack stopped the car halfway through the race and got out of the seat. Samuel was still looking in astonishment. You want to go? He asked Samuel. Samuel didn't even reply. He jumped into the seat and started the car. The good thing is that the mark only is needed to start the game. We can keep playing now. It's just a shame we can't race each other at the same time, Jack said. Samuel wasn't even listening. He was living a dream. He often had dreams of being a racing car driver on a racing circuit. Obviously, through lack of practice and the fact he was only 10 years old, he was not the best driver in the world, but he was having the time of his life. After several laps, he started to get the hang of it. Suddenly the lights went off and all the games went silent. "I didn't do anything wrong," Samuel exclaimed. Jack totally changed his personality. "Go back to bed, Sam. I have some work to do." In the power cut, all the secure doors had opened and there were soldiers running in all directions. Samuel went into the main bedroom and all the kids were changing into military outfits. They even had guns. Samuel ran to his bed and sat in awe of everything around him. A dozen soldiers had lined up inside the doorway. He guessed they were there for protection. Samuel wasn't scared. He was fascinated and curious and wished he was a soldier too. They seemed to have all the fun. Matthew stood in the corridor, taking in everything that had happened to him. He had the mark, but he didn't feel any different. Wanting to try out this new gadget of his, he headed back into the main front hall, past his bedroom on the left. Reaching the security door, he swiped his hand on the panel, and the door slid open. He was back in the main hall, and turning left he saw the sandwich shop. There were still people queuing for food. Joining the queue, filled with excitement and anticipation, for the first time since a young adult, he'll be able to buy something in a shop. It was a standard bakery. One woman was serving behind the counter. On the back wall were shelves full of different types of bread. In front of her glass was chilled cabinets with bowls of different fillings. "What can I get you?" she asked Matthew. He paused. There was so much variety. "I would like a baguette, please," he said. "What would you like in it?" she asked. Matthew was completely taken aback, realizing he had no idea what he wanted. She was smiling at him and patient. Clearly this was not the first indecisive customer of her day. "You choose. I can't decide," he replied. The woman picked a baguette and used the knife to cut it in half. She then chose a green-coloured sauce with lumpy bits and proceeded to spread it on the baguette. Wrapping the baguette in a tissue and then in a paper bag, she handed it to Matthew and looked at him patiently. "Thank you," he said. As he turned to leave the shop, she purposely cleared her throat audibly. "Are you planning to pay for that?" she said. Matthew turned around and realised he had no idea about the procedure for paying. "I'm new to this. How does it work?" Matthew inquired. The woman smiled and pointed to a computer terminal on the side of the cabinet. It had a scan panel on it. Matthew reached out his hand and swiped the panel. The computer audibly beeped, and the woman nodded. Matthew turned around and left the shop. He had his baguette and headed back to his room to eat it. As he swiped the panel to his bedroom, he couldn't believe he had lived so long without this technology. There was nothing wrong with it at all. All this superstition whereby taking the mark would destroy your life seemed completely dumbfounded. Sitting on the bed, he unwrapped the savoury delight, held carefully in his hands. He had never seen anything like it. The green sauce had started to drip down the side of the bread. He opened his mouth and took a bite. Different herbs and spices flooded his mouth. He tried to think back to anything he had eaten before, but this was a completely new experience to him. With his tongue tingling and his body wanting more, he took another bite. It was the best baguette he could ever remember eating. Bang! That's the noise he heard. Then he was in darkness, but only for a second. The lights appeared to have blown, but his bedroom door automatically opened. He got up and looked out of the door. There was no one there. He swiped his hand on the door panel, but to no effect. All the lights in the corridor were off too. He looked up and down the corridor and noticed all the security doors had opened. This exposed him to all the rooms. Making his way to the main hall, he saw a garrison of soldiers parading with groups of 6 to 12 soldiers manning every secure door which remained open. "What is going on?" he asked one of the receptionists nearby. The woman behind the desk leaned over and said, "There's been a power cut. We're still getting to the bottom of it. I suggest you go back to your room for your own safety." She looked concerned and slightly scared. Matthew was curious and decided to have a look around. Now he had the mark, he didn't feel he had to fear anything anymore. He walked across the main hall. Soldiers were running past him in all directions. It appeared to be organized chaos, with commanding officers shouting directions everywhere. Making his way to the courtyard outside, it was the same confusion as inside. "What are you doing outside?" Matthew turned and saw a female soldier pointing a weapon straight at him. He could see the woman meant business, and so he quickly replied, "Nothing. I was just wondering what was happening." "Get back inside and go to your quarters, otherwise you may be shot," she shouted back at him. Matthew didn't want to stand around arguing with a woman holding a gun to his face. He turned around and briskly walked back into the building, heading straight for his room. As he sat in his bedroom, he realized he wasn't as free as he thought. He may have to earn his freedom still. Thomas was cold, but he was not one who gave up on his first hurdle. He had slept well and was now awake on his metal bed. There was one woven sheet covering a flat sheet of metal. He had propped his jacket under his head as a makeshift pillow. It was not the most comfortable room he had spent the night in, but after lying on a stone table outside, this was a welcome bedroom. He even thanked God for providing him with shelter. As he lay on the bed, he prayed that God would protect him from any harm that would come his way, and that he would find a way to escape this misery. He had his eyes shut when he was startled by a loud bang. Immediately he opened them. The lights in his room had switched off, and what was very curious to him was that the door to his cell had slid open abruptly. Inquisitively, he grabbed his jacket, slipped it on and rose from his bed. Creeping towards the door, he peered out and realized that no one was around. Who could have opened the door? He also spotted that the door out of the building was open. He also spotted that the door out of the building was also open. There was a lot of shouting and whistleblowing emanating from outside. As Thomas crept out of the cell and to the outside door, he saw soldiers running back and forth. Realizing instantly that something out of the ordinary must have happened, he started thinking about what he could do to escape. He recalled the layout of the castle from when he was looking over one of the walls. From his position, he could reach the front gate easily, but knew if he was to make it out, he had to get a soldier's uniform. Just to his left were the soldiers' quarters, where he was caught the previous night. The door was wide open, and male and female soldiers, both in and out of uniform, were running back and forth through it. This must be the building where he could steal a uniform. Hiding behind a group of civilian-clothed soldiers, pretending to be one of them, he ran towards the building. It was all the strength within him to conceal the pain in his legs, which caused him to limp slightly. Once in the building, he saw a room on the right, full of bunk beds. So he left the group and went into the room, frantically looking for any uniforms in or around the beds. He looked in the lockers behind each bed. Each one was locked, but then he saw a locker that had clearly been kicked in and had a damaged lock. In it was a tatty and dirty looking uniform rolled into a ball. Trying on the uniform, there was one thing that was abundantly clear. It was at least 2 sizes too big for him. Then again, as the phrase says, beggars can't be choosers. Before drawing any attention to himself, he ran out the bedroom and out of the building. In the confusion, nobody noticed the young man running to the front gate. Once he'd reached the security barrier there, it was clear there were no guards. He guessed that in a normal situation, the gates and barriers would be active. The castle was surrounded by a dried up lake. Obviously, this cut of electricity couldn't last forever, so Thomas quickly jumped into the dry moat and found a place to hide under the entrance bridge. It was light outside, and he realised that until night fell, he would not be able to make any attempt to escape. It was a chilly afternoon, and what seemed like hours by the time it was dark. The time had given him an opportunity to plot his escape from the castle. There was a forest within only 100 metres of the moat where he lay. That should be an easy run. After that, he would use his own cunning to make his next move. Once he felt the darkness was sufficient, he climbed out of the grassy moat. There were no soldiers outside the castle, so he crawled along the grass. Each time he heard the slightest noise, a shout from someone in the castle, or even the sound of a bird or animal, he lay still, trembling with fear that he could be caught at any moment. Finally, he reached the forest and ran deep inside the covering of the trees. In the darkness, he tripped over loose tree branches and slipped on mud beneath his feet. After a few hours, he lay heavily panting underneath a thick overgrown bush. Using his jacket as an underblanket, he soon fell into a weary and anxious sleep. Thank you for listening. I've also put links in the bottom of the video for the other 3 chapters so far, and I will also include a link to the future chapter when it's recorded. Please like the video if you like it. Please leave a comment and tell me what you think. And if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I have plenty of other things on the channel as well. Please click subscribe, it would be nice to keep you updated. And also next to the subscribe button is a bell. If you click the bell, you'll get a notification every time I release a new video. So, hope to hear from you soon, and goodbye.